Hey there, gardener. Welcome to my garden. My onions are ready for harvest, so I want to teach you guys how to know when they are ready to be pulled and how to cure them so they last longer in storage. These are the very same onions that I planted in my how to plant onions tutorial, which I will link below. So I'm really happy to show you guys the results because some of these onions are the biggest that I've ever grown. If you're new here, my name is Jera. I've been gardening all of my life and I'm a professional seed and plant nursery. I love to share my knowledge and teach others how to garden and grow food. So you've come to the right place if you want to improve your gardening skills. So let's discuss how to know that your onions are ready for harvest. There are a few different indicators, so you decide what works best for you. You can pretty much harvest your onions at any point, really. If you just need an onion bulb for dinner, go pull one out. You don't have to wait for them to get to full maturity. The most commonly advised indicator is to harvest your onions once the greens flop over. And this is true, you can. They should have a decent bulb on them by this point. But my preferred indicator is to pull the onions out once all the greens have dried out and turned brown. This will allow your onions to have the longest growing period possible to develop the biggest bulb possible. There are a couple exceptions to these indicators. One, if your onions are producing flower heads. This means they're bolting or going into the flowering stage. This is fine if you want to save some seeds to grow next season. However, if this is not your plan, then harvest them now. They are not going to get any bigger. The plant is now focusing on producing seeds instead of growing a bigger bulb. And secondly, if you're approaching a rainy season, if you have one, here in Florida, we have a very defined rainy season where it rains like a monsoon every day in the summer. All of that extra rain will rot out your bulbs. This is why we plant our onions in the fall and winter so they grow, and we harvest them in the spring before summer arrives. Also, if you notice any onions with necks that have fallen over, broken, or starting to soften up, prioritize harvesting and using those up first. Soft or broken necks means they won't last very long in storage. All right, let's harvest some onions. There are so many ways to do this. The main thing is to not damage the bulbs and to preserve some of the green or dried out brown tops. I like to harvest on a warm and dry day when the soil is dry. It's pretty easy to shake them out of the ground. If you're having difficulty, you can loosen the surrounding soil with a hand shovel or something like that. You can also just cut it where the roots join the bulb and leave the roots in the soil. It will break down and feed the soil microbes. So I'm gonna get to harvesting. I love onions so much, I cook with them every day. So I grew as many onions as I could this season. I have them in the ground, in grow bags, and even in a green stock garden tower. All of these onions are growing in like a wooden barrel type thing, and they did fantastic. The majority of the onion greens here have flopped over. They're not completely brown and dried out, which is my preference. However, they started flowering. Here's one of the flowers right here, and here's another one right here. So all of these onion bulbs have started focusing their efforts and energy into flowering and producing seed. Even though they're not completely 100% brown and dried out, I'm gonna start harvesting them all. They are not gonna get much bigger than this. Let's pull this one out. Stuck in there pretty good. Actually, I think this is a scenario where I'm going to use the scissors to cut it at the roots. And there you go. Came out pretty easy. That's a nice sized onion. When you harvest out your onions, resist the urge to wash the dirt off from them. You can gently brush the dirt off, but you don't want to wash or wet these at all because then they won't last as long in storage. I do like to cut off all those extra roots though. Might as well just take them off the bulbs. That way there's less mess in your harvest basket. You also don't want to cut off all the greens, the tops here, because this will help you hang them if that's what you want to do, or you can braid them so they can dry out nice for storage. Another nice big one. And if you love onions, they are super easy to grow, so give it a try. They don't take up much space. I probably fit at least 20 onions. I believe this is a 22 or 26 diameter wooden planting barrel. So that's a lot of onions in just one little spot. They also don't have too many pests or diseases because honestly, not a lot of pests or diseases really bother things in the allium family. I absolutely love onions. Like I said, I cook with them almost every single day. And what I noticed is the flavor of homegrown onions is so much stronger than anything you can buy at the grocery store. I seriously don't know how long those onions at the grocery store have been sitting there because they lose so much of their flavor. This one here is a little bit small. It didn't really bulb up. Not sure why. You can use this entire thing just like you would like green onions. I wasn't kidding when I said that I have planted onions like in every spot imaginable in my garden. A really great idea for them is to make a row like right up against the edges of any of your raised garden beds because they don't take up a lot of space. So I put a whole row here of these red onions right at the very front, and then I have corn growing behind it. So everything got enough sunlight. These red ones matured a lot faster than the yellow ones because their tops are completely dried out and brown, but that's okay. Wow, look how big this one is. These two came out really big. Not bad for just some extra red onions growing in the edges of a garden bed. This is crazy. This basket is so heavy, and this isn't all of them. I still have the whole other side of my garden wanted to go check and harvest. I'm actually very impressed by how well these onions grew in a green stock garden tower. Seriously, you can grow practically anything in one of these things. Some of the biggest onions I harvested came out of this green stock garden tower. I'm not sponsored by them or anything, but they did give me a discount code for my viewers. If you follow the link in the description below, you can get $10 off your order. I have greatly maximized how much food I can grow because of all of these towers. Let's harvest this big one out. They're so big, they almost like formed to the pattern of the green stock garden tower. Actually, I think I'm gonna have to lift this up a little bit to pop it out and get the scissors in there to just cut the roots. See, really big in a green stock garden tower. I never would have thought. And there's a bunch more. They're smaller, but all of my onions are drying out at this point and flopping over. It's late in my season. I really need to just pull them all out. And that way too, I can lay them out and cure them, which we'll talk about that next. All right, so I found all of the onions around my garden. This is crazy. This is so much more than I thought. So I'm gonna do something fun. I'm gonna give away a $10 gift card to my website, my plant and seed shop, to the first 3 people that correctly guess how many pounds of onions that I have here. So comment below your guess. And let's be careful of scammers. I personally will contact the 3 winners below in the comments to tell you that I'm going to email you, and you have to respond to that email so that I can send you the gift card. I'm not going to ask you to send me money or anything like that in any way. It's an e-gift card, so I don't need your address either. So please be careful of scammers. I'd prefer you ask me if you think there is some kind of scam before you actually do it. This is a lot, but next season I want to grow even more. Now I have to cure all of these so they last longer in storage, because there is no way I can use up all of these fast enough. Properly cured onions can last 3 to 6 months in storage, depending on the variety and how well they were cured. All right, so to cure your onions, you're gonna find a nice area that's very drafty. The wind flows through it so that it can dry the outer skins of those onions properly and evenly. Check the weather forecast so you can make sure it's not gonna rain within like the next 1 to 2 weeks. If it does rain, you're gonna have to gather up all your onions and bring them inside while it's raining, and then bring them back outside once it's stopped. And there's so many ways that you can dry and cure onions. I mean, you can braid them up, hang them off from something. A lot of people will hang them off like their cattle panel trellises and things like that. But quite honestly, for me, the easiest thing to do is just get an old towel, lay it out. You also want to make sure that the spot is shady. You don't want it to be like in full sun. And here's all the onions after weighing them. This is so crazy. I'm just gonna lay them all out in one nice layer. I laid them out as best as I could. This will do. And you want to let these cure for at least 2, maybe 3 weeks, depending on how dry the outer skins are at the end of the process. You'll know they're done curing when the most outer layers of the skin are nice and dry and crispy, just like the ones you get at the grocery store. But of course, if you need an onion or 2 for dinner that day or something like that, you can go ahead and use them. They're ready. You can store the onions in mesh onion bags or cardboard boxes with some holes cut in for ventilation. And that's it. Harvesting and curing onions is just as easy as growing them. If you've never grown onions before, I invite you to check out my tutorials below so you have the information needed to be successful growing onions too. I also sell onion seeds on my website if you want to grow the same kind that I grow in my garden. Thank you for watching, and happy gardening.